Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 99 of Paul Heyman's TNA. And we begin with footage from earlier today as security and law enforcement officers were drafted in to ensure that CM Punk, Samoa Joe and the New Age of Honor were not allowed into the building. This in reaction, of course, to the decimation of the locker room at their hands last week. They all arrived together, having not appeared throughout the entire show, and just set about taking apart the various parts of the backstage area. This led to CM Punk confronting Bryan Danielson in the ring and basically letting him know that it's his choice to either join this group or to go down with the sinking ship that he feels TNA is. And as well as the guys we see on screen, of course, there is ANX, there is the Kings of Wrestling, and the newest additions, Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly, who jumped Bryan Danielson last week. There was an exception for the group being allowed into the building, and that was the Kings of Wrestling, albeit they were escorted into the building alone, and we are told they will be escorted out after their match. Outside the arena, CM Punk spoke through a megaphone saying that he and the rest of the Ring of Honor representatives would be there all night and they would be heard. CM Punk is shown to have been speaking with TNA fans as they filed into the building, and some appeared to agree with his sentiment. CM Punk says that the more TNA tries to push them away to the fringes, the more the people will be drawn towards their message. He is the voice of the voiceless, and the Saviour insists that he will not be silenced and their movement will not be stopped. And the justification for this isn't just a punishment or a reaction to what they did last week. It is to ensure that our go-home show is safe and that all the competitors who are booked for hard justice actually make it to that show. If we have a repeat of last week, then there's a good chance that somebody's going to get seriously hurt and it could screw up our pay-per-view. So that's the justification in terms of why the company have done that, and we'll see how that develops, of course, throughout the night. The Bound for Glory Tag Team Series then begins. We're in Block A as Creed and Dutt face the Kings of Wrestling, and it is an emphatic, decisive way to start this tournament for the Kings of Wrestling. They win in 6 minutes and 50, Claudio pinning Austin Creed with a Swiss death. So 3 points for them, 0 points for their opponents, and you can see why it's Hero and Castagnoli who are picking up the win. Two fantastic performances from them. Dutt and Creed doing okay, and it's an okay match to open the show. I never expected it to be incredible because it was so short and relatively one-sided. Great heat and good wrestling though, and the Kings of Wrestling stand tall. No sooner though are their arms raised than they are approached by that team of security, as the commentators put over the statement that was sent out by Hero and Castagnoli with that decisive win. As we said, the two are led away from the ring and out of the building. It doesn't matter if you're in a TNA ring winning matches, if you're part of that New Age of Honor tonight, you will not be tolerated. The Kings of Wrestling are resistant and cause issues for the security team, but eventually backup arrives. The sheer numbers mean that they can get Hero and Castagnoli under control. Taz points out that as the only members of the New Age of Honor that are actually in the building, it's probably as much for their own safety that they're led out of this building than that of the TNA roster. Hero and Castagnoli in the back on their own, that probably wouldn't have ended well either. Mauro and Taz then continue this conversation and begin to recap the end of last week's show, a video package showing Bryan Danielson being attacked by Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly as he looked to defeat Kevin Steen, with CM Punk then issuing that ultimatum that we mentioned. This ship is going down according to CM Punk, and he's saying that Bryan Danielson has a limited amount of time to make this decision. We then get the entrance of AJ Styles, followed closely by his partner for Sunday, Christopher Daniels, and they once again put over the fact that they've had recent differences. However, again, they've been brought together by something bigger and something more important. They may no longer spend time outside of the ring together, but there is no questioning their chemistry as a team, and that's what this company needs right now. They need to win these big matches, and AJ and Daniels are two of the best when they're on the same side. At times like this, those personal issues are put to the side for the good of TNA, and Christopher Daniels speaks of another former friend of theirs, Samoa Joe. Daniels says that throughout his career, Joe has been nothing if not unpredictable. You've never really been certain that you can trust him, but anybody who came up in the business with CM Punk, or has even seen him on television over the years, they know what a corrupting force that he has always been. He speaks of these higher virtues, but he's only ever cared about himself. Styles says that on Sunday, the four of them will be in the ring, but tonight, Punk and Joe are outside trying to spread their poison. They may not be allowed in the building, but there's nothing stopping AJ from leaving and going out to them. If they continue, he'll be paying them a visit on the outside, and after what they did last week, it's not going to be pretty for the Ring of Honor guys. So a rallying cry from AJ Styles there. They're not going to take what happened lying down, and if the Ring of Honor guys keep on with what they're doing, then he has no issue taking the fight to them. We then get a segment in the back where Colt Cabana and El Generico are shown in the doctor's room, and El Generico is suffering from that injury that was sustained last week. It is confirmed by the doctor that he will not be allowed to compete for a while, and what it does mean is that the duo are out of the Bound for Glory tag team series. El Generico doesn't understand the doctor, but Cabana's expression tells him all that he needs to know. Cabana helps Generico to leave the room. He's not in a good way, and both look very dejected to have had such a huge opportunity taken away from them at the very last moment. We then get a match between Alyssa Flash and Rosita, which isn't very good. A submission win for Alyssa Flash with the inverted cloverleaf, and it's just about keeping her in that consciousness of the Knockouts division. As Alyssa Flash stands tall in the ring, however, attention is kind of quickly drawn away from her as the commentators send to an incident in the back. Jeremy Borash is on the scene. He's always the first with any breaking news, and we see Amazing Red down and out on the ground, his LAX partners Hernandez and Homicide being the first to find him. Red is not conscious, and Jeremy Borash says there is no indication of who may have been responsible for the attack. All we know is that presumably when he wasn't with Homicide and Hernandez, Amazing Red has been taken out. Returning from the break, we get Alyssa Flash interviewed. She was going to say something after the match. Of course, we got the cutaway, so she's taking the moment right now, saying that everybody who saw Tara's win over her last week knows that Flash had Tara beat if it wasn't for her grabbing the referee. Alyssa Flash therefore wants a rematch, and she's challenging Tara for this Sunday at Hard Justice. A fairly straightforward segment there as we go into a video package that looks at the physical torment that Jay Lethal has put Desmond Wolfe through since Wolfe became the Evolved Champion. Defeated cleanly in Wolfe's first title defence, Lethal snapped after that match at the behest of his former fiancée Maria. Since then, Jay Lethal has attacked Wolfe with a steel chair on multiple occasions, despite being repeatedly told that if he wanted a title shot, if he wanted to face Wolfe again, he would need to earn it. He's not just going to get it because of the attacks. Tonight, Lethal will get the best possible opportunity to prove himself against the champion, as they will go one-on-one. It's more of a grudge match because this is a match where the Evolved Championship is not on the line, and Desmond Wolfe, we see, is still feeling the effects of last week's attack from Jay Lethal, but despite that, puts in a good performance and shows just how tough he is. Eventually, with a distraction from Maria on the referee and a low blow from Jay Lethal, Lethal is able to hit the lethal injection to Wolfe and pin him for the 1, 2, 3. And while it is a victory for Lethal, it's certainly not clean. It's about as far away from clean as you can get. Not only was Wolfe at a disadvantage because of the attack 5 days ago, he also had to contest with Maria throughout the match and then a low blow. So very much keeping Wolfe strong in defeat. It's his first loss since he won the title, and we don't want champions to be losing all that often. Maria Kanellis then joins Jay Lethal in the ring as the two take part in an over-the-top make-out session to celebrate his victory. They stand over the Evolved Champion and continue with this for a lot longer than is comfortable for the viewers. The commentator suggests that following this victory, an Evolved title shot may well be in the future at Lethal. Despite the many question marks over his tactics, the record books will still show Lethal defeating the Evolved Champion. We then come back to the second hour of Impact and we get an update on the CM Punk, Joe and the New Age of Honor situation. They remain outside of the building and CM Punk is continuing to rant about TNA to anybody that will listen. When he sees the cameras, he decides to send a message right back to AJ Styles. He's been told what AJ said earlier, and if he wants to bring the fight out to them, they are more than ready. It's a 14-strong group, so they are not at all concerned. Punk explains that he's coming to fight at Hard Justice for one reason, and that is to prove that he and Joe are on another level to AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. The beating that they give them at the pay-per-view will show that TNA is nowhere near what Ring of Honor is capable of, and maybe some of those fans who are still too stupid to see what's in front of them will finally understand what's happening. Punk doesn't care about TNA or their pay-per-view, so if AJ Styles and Daniels want to come out and get beaten so badly that they can't compete on Sunday, then they're more than welcome to. They know exactly where he and the rest of this group are, and they're going to be here for the rest of the night. Punk improvising well, it's a decent segment, and setting up the idea there that both of these sides are ready for a fight, not just at the pay-per-view, but also tonight. Kurt Angle then comes to the ring for a good segment, with the commentators putting over his injury from last week. He takes a microphone and tells viewers about that injury, saying that while the adrenaline carried him through the rest of the match last week, he's been in pain for the entire week. Despite this, Kurt has been given the green light to compete at Hard Justice, and he's not looking for any excuses. Bryan Danielson then comes out, and he seems frustrated that his opponent won't be at 100% for that match on Sunday. Of course, it plays into his favour, but at the same time, as World Heavyweight Champion, like Kurt said, he's not looking for any excuses. There will still be the idea that Kurt wasn't at 100% if Bryan beats him. The World Heavyweight Champion looks Kurt in the eyes, asking him again if he is sure he is ready to compete. Like he said, there will be no excuses and no second chances, so Bryan's telling Kurt to think long and hard about this decision. Kurt assures him that he is absolutely ready for Sunday, and Danielson adds that Kurt has put a tag on his injury, and Danielson will exploit it until Kurt can't continue, and he just wants to make sure one final time he knows what he's in for at Hard Justice. This threat gets Kurt's back up, and he goes nose to nose with a champion. Angle says that in 15 months only one man has been able to beat him, that's Bryan Danielson, but on Sunday Angle is ready to prove why he is still the greatest ever. Nobody beats him twice. He's coming for the World Heavyweight Championship, and this injury isn't going to stop that. So hopefully an intense moment between the champion and challenger going into their rematch. And while it wasn't something I planned, of course, having Angle with a bit of an injury does have a different wrinkle and will probably change the way that I book that main event. So again, one of those things that the game throws up that does make things a little bit more interesting. We then get Mickie James against the Amazon ahead of her championship defense against Madison Rayne at Hard Justice. And as we see, the Amazon really poor in ring. If you remember, I was going to let her go. Dixie extended her contract, so I thought now was a time to use her. And it's Mickie trying to chop her down early on. Eventually the Amazon takes control, maybe gets her into the corner, and she's stomped her in the corner. But the Amazon is uncontrollable. The referee tries to tell her that there's a 5 count. She doesn't listen, and this leads to a disqualification, and she continues to lay into Mickie James after the match. Mickie putting in a decent performance, to be fair, but it's never going to be a good match when the Amazon is in it, hence why we kept it pretty short. While she was outmatched in the ring early on, the physicality of the Amazon allows her to continue to lay into Mickie James after the match. Coming out from the back, Madison Rayne orders the Amazon to hold Mickie in position. The Queen of the Mountain then puts on her glove, or maybe a new glove considering Mickie confiscated it last week, and hits the knockout punch to the Knockouts champion. Last week Mickie was able to evade that move twice, but with the Amazon holding her in position, that's not going to happen. Mickie James lays out cold in the ring. Madison Rayne standing tall, ready for Sunday. Mauro and Taz say that if Rayne can find a way to connect that punch with the jaw of Mickie at Hard Justice, we will have a new Knockouts champion. Of course, she won't have it laid on a plate for her like she did tonight, but the story of that match is going to be whether Madison Rayne can cause the distraction and get that shot to Mickie. Otherwise, Mickie maybe is the favourite going into the match. AJ Styles then cuts a promo in the back, having been asked for a response to Punk's response. Those words were a red rag to a bull, as Styles confirms that he will be going out to confront that group. But he's not going out now because he wants to call on anybody who still gives a damn about this company to join him. Arriving on the scene immediately as soon as he's heard this, Christopher Daniels ensures AJ Styles that he's in, and Daniels has a few buddies that he's sure are gonna want to join him. We then get one of his friends, Frankie Kazarian, defeating Tyson Dukes in 4 minutes and 52 with a fade to black. Another poor match, but it is a squash match for Frankie Kazarian, and again, we're looking towards Hard Justice. He will be facing Tyler Black with Black's X Division Championship on the line, and while of course that is a huge match for him, it's clear that at the moment his focus is elsewhere as he quickly leaves the ring, and it's somehow put across that he will be joining Styles and Daniels in heading out to confront the Ring of Honor representatives at the end of the show. We then return from the break where Jeff Hardy and Sting are shown in the rafters. The commentators look to the main event. Beer Money versus Motor City Machine Guns, one of the most iconic tag team matches in TNA, and what better way to kick off Block B of the Bound for Glory Tag Team Series than having those two teams go up against each other. But the commentators are also commenting on the fact that Sting and Hardy appear to be in deep conversation. There's so much going on tonight, but it's not really known what that's about. Are they discussing the thing that's going to happen at the end of the night with the TNA guys going confronting Ring of Honor? Are they just discussing the Bound for Glory series? Of course, they've also got the American Wolves this Sunday, so lots on their plate too. Up next, Beer Money versus Motor City Machine Guns. We're using this match essentially to establish one of the rules. This is Block B, and the match, great wrestling and good heat. It's a really strong main event for the show with some brilliant performances. I don't think I've ever seen Alex Shelley get into the 80s, so that's great to see, as is Robert Roode with a 79. But in 15 minutes, the two teams draw as the time limit expired. With this being one of the rules, I thought I'd just establish it. The idea kind of throughout Beer Money and Motor City Machine Guns storyline or extended series of matches has been that they are absolutely neck and neck. And now, as the first two teams to compete from Block B, they go top, but only with 1 point. And the idea after this is that neither team is particularly happy with the result. Both had chances to win it. Both came close, but it didn't quite happen for them. And while they've both scored a point, it's better than losing. It does give the other teams an opening. These are probably the two favourites to finish first and second and qualify to those semi-finals. So the Young Bucks, LAX, and Cabana and whoever he finds as his replacement, which will be revealed on Evolve, will likely be encouraged by this. If LAX can win their first match, if the Bucks can win their first match, if of course Cabana and whoever he teams with can win their first match, they're then put in the driver's seat. And this is an opportunity that they maybe didn't expect to get, in that they can end the first week of this series top of the group on their own with no other teams close to them. Despite their grievances, Beer Money approach Motor City Machine Guns after the match, and they're in discussion about joining this fight back against Ring of Honor. So despite that disappointment, there is still that focus. Two teams so heavily associated with TNA, and they're both going to be going out to this fight that ends the show. We return from the final break, and a huge group of TNA wrestlers are shown heading towards the exit of the building, where CM Punk, Samoa Joe, and the New Age of Honor are shown. I've put on screen the full list there. AJ, the four members of the Forefathers, Motor City Machine Guns, Jeff and Sting, confirming what they were doing earlier, WGTT, Creed, Dutt, and Eric Young. So guys who are also, they have their own issues to deal with, pay-per-view matches, Bound for Glory Tag Team Series, but they are committed to this company. Eventually, they reach that wall of security with CM Punk, Samoa Joe, Austin Aries, Tyler Black, the Kings of Wrestling, American Wolves, Jimmy Jacobs, Steve Corino, ANX, and Cole and O'Reilly on the other side. While the numbers were enough to keep Ring of Honor out, we now basically have twice as many people, and quickly security lose all control as the mass of fired up, furious competitors begin to brawl. What follows resembles a riot at the entrance of the building. There is a famous segment from TNA, which was, I think, called the Impact Zone Riot. While we're not in the Impact Zone, this is the image that we want. There is no sign of any control being restored. There's simply not enough people in the building to try and keep these two sides apart. Mauro and Taz speak over the chaos, but only to sell this Sunday's Hard Justice. We've got CM Punk and Samoa Joe versus Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles, and those four men are leading the charge at this very moment. It may take a very, very long time. It may take all night to bring this under control, but this is the level of intensity that you can expect from this pay-per-view as the war between Ring of Honor and TNA rages on. And I actually feel that this, and also what happened last week, has been a really good spark to this storyline. I would look back and say I maybe started it a little bit slowly. Of course, bringing Punk in, he had to have a few weeks of cutting his promos. I don't think I've sold all that well how much this war means and how important it is. And I think in the last couple of weeks, and with what we've got going forward, we will get the opportunity to do just that, and ending the show with 28 guys, I think it is, just absolutely destroying each other. There's going to be probably just as many security, so the idea for me of having like a bird's eye view of this as we end the show is just a really crazy way to end Impact, and hopefully creates that buzz for the pay-per-view and for this overarching story. It's called the Summer of the Saviour, but of course this is now Ring of Honor versus TNA. I also put a post-show segment in just to get the guys who hadn't been used on screen, so everybody else had either had a match or been in a segment previously, whereas those 7 weren't. So yeah, nothing really that important, but Cole and O'Reilly get great ratings for their young lion gimmicks, so that's good to see. It's a post-show segment, so it won't affect our ratings in any way. A 77 is a very good episode overall. I'm happy with that, and yeah, that's TNA Impact. A crazy way to end the show for sure, and we've still got Evolve 24 hours, or I suppose it's on demand now, so it's not 24 hours, but we're going to go into Evolve now, and that is the final show before Hard Justice 2011. And we begin with a recap of what happened on Impact. The Kings of Wrestling won, taking them top of Block A. Beer Money and Motor City Machine Guns drew, meaning they both have 1 point, and it means that the 2 teams who are facing tonight will get the chance to take an early lead in Block B. Speaking of Block B, we see Colt Cabana in the back, and he has found a replacement partner for El Generico. It is Eric Young. So sort of 2 guys who obviously are known for their comedy ability as well. With EY desperate to find his way, he jumped at the opportunity. When Cabana introduces Eric Young to El Generico, Generico gives a thumbs up. He is happy for Cabana and EY to take this opportunity together, and it's a decent segment, and I think that these 2 characters, Cabana and Young specifically, can bounce off each other really well. Despite that, they are defeated by the Young Bucks, who go top of Block B. An injury for Matt Jackson. I hope this isn't going to be a recurring theme of this tag team series with these guys being in action so often. The Young Bucks win. Despite the injury, he is still able to pull off the more bang for your buck, pinning Eric Young following a decently length competitive match. This is what I mean now with Evolve. We're able to give guys who I might not have put these in such a long match a few weeks ago, whereas now I'm happy to just give the time to the in-ring action. Matt Jackson with his sprained ankle, struggling back to his feet of course after the match. They are joined by Larry Sweeney, who points to the big screen to make sure that everybody is aware that this team, the Young Bucks, part of Sweet and Sour, are top of the group. How long that'll last remains to be seen. We then get a video package of the riot between Ring of Honor and TNA, which ended Impact. Hard Justice is this Sunday, and we can confirm eventually order was restored. We then get a Beautiful People show with Tara, and she requested this interview to basically make the statement that before she is done, she wants the Knockouts title. She accepts Alyssa Flash's challenge for that reason, and she is ready to put her down once and for all and set her sights on the Knockouts title. We're changing her gimmick from badass, which was poor, and I got a note saying that I think it was getting stale as well. Hopefully this, which I've just called determined, and it's because she now has this specific goal in mind. Hopefully it gets a decent rating. Yeah, very good. I'm happy with that. And I think that this is going to help me with where we're going to push Tara, maybe making it a little bit clearer now, in that she's explicitly stated she wants the Knockouts title once more. Of course, first she has to go through Alyssa Flash, who she did struggle with in their previous match. At the same time, the purpose of this segment also is to kind of show that the Beautiful People aren't that fussed about DNR. Maybe they are underestimating them going into the Hard Justice match. Putting a Beautiful People show on when they could be preparing for a title defense doesn't really reflect that they're taking this the most serious. Mischief then defeats Hannah Blossom in 4 minutes and 20 with a code green, and this is another example of what Evolve's going to be used for now. Mischief has been off screen since losing her rivalry with Alyssa Flash. It's just the idea that by being in matches, by being on screen, hopefully it helps me formulate the next step for these people. There's no point just keeping them off screen altogether, and while this may be seen as her treading water, I think Mischief picking up a win is definitely a good thing, despite it being a very poorly rated match and a segment that follows up. Mischief joins in, celebrating the victory. Hayes is very pumped up and excited, whilst Mischief is a little bit more understated, so just continuing to develop their odd couple as part of the Knockouts tag team division. We then get the commentators running down the Hard Justice card, and they also confirm that Paul Heyman will return to TNA this Thursday on Impact, or next Thursday on Impact, after what happened at the end of that show, after what has been happening in the last few weeks. The pressure has finally mounted that Heyman cannot keep burying his head in the sand. He has to do something, and he will do it. This Thursday, we're of course promoting the pay-per-view where Bryan Danielson will defend his championship against Kurt Angle, the World Heavyweight Championship that is, as well as AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels facing CM Punk and Samoa Joe in CM Punk's first match in a TNA ring. We then get a promo from Kevin Steen and Paul London, who have their eyes on the main event. They're the teams sitting out this week because there's 5 teams in each group. Every week of the Bound for Glory Tag Team Series, one team from each side will not be in action, but Paul London and Kevin Steen making it clear that they have their eyes on the main event because they will be facing the All Night Express in their first match next week. Both of them improvising well, and a very good promo from them, and WGTT, probably unsurprisingly, defeat ANX, but again, we give them 12 minutes. If this was on Impact, it might have been 8, so it's definitely good to have this extra hour, and without it, we wouldn't have been able to book this Bound for Glory Tag Team Series. Shelton head and shoulders above the rest, Rhett Titus the weak link. Again, this would have caused us problems if it had been on MTV, so again, we're reaping the benefits of that lower level of pressure, but WGTT join the Kings of Wrestling at the top of their block. Again, these are probably the 2 teams who are favourites to advance to the Final 4, and the early goings of this block shows exactly that. Probably the worst Evolve we've done. I do still need to be careful about losing popularity. It seems like Impact gains us popularity, then Evolve knocks us down, but during this period where we've got the Bound for Glory Tag Team Series, it's pretty much always going to be one of those matches that's the main event, so it's just hoping that we can have a good enough show. Again, I'm not somebody who worries too much about ratings other than when it's going to result in us being kicked off networks as it did, but now I'm happy to just see Evolve as, it's not quite a B show because it's still classed as an A show, but it very much is the secondary concern. And of course, our primary concern now is Hard Justice 2011, although I have just seen a message, there it is, Matt Jackson sidelined a week while he recovers, so if we need to, maybe we can have Magnus as a one-night replacement. I don't know if that'll be necessary. Hopefully Matt will be okay to compete, but if not, we can always either rejig the schedule or quite easily find a way around it if it is only a week. Before then, as I said, we have the pay-per-view. I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully the build has been good. I'll put the card on screen as I always do, and we'll be back with that next week. Thank you for watching, and it is a big episode 100, so I'm really happy for CM Punk's debut to be taking place on a landmark episode of the series. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers.